Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our special budget meeting, 2025 budget tabling and public meeting agenda. Boy, 2025 seems like a long time from, when you're thinking about it when you were young. It's 2025. Boy. Okay. So, be it resolved that the special council agenda as presented on November 27th, 2024 be approved as circulated. That is moved by Councillor Cairns and seconded by Councillor Hunter. Please vote.
Missing two votes. Missing one. Someone hasn't voted. Okay.
Okay.
Peter missed voting.
Okay, that's okay. That carries. We will now go over to Councillor Strength for the land acknowledgement statement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the first peoples who, for thousands of years before us, were and are still the keepers and caretakers of this land where we now live and work, and in particular, the Chippewas of Rama, Wattamohawk First Nation, and the Moon River Métis. We are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people. We recognize all the generations of Indigenous peoples and their historic connection to this place, and we are grateful for the opportunity to gather here at this time. Miigwech.
Thank you. Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Okay, I suppose if you find yourself in that situation, as conversations unroll throughout the budget, just mention it and then declare it, and then speak with the clerk to submit something along the way. Okay, so we have new business, but before I do that, I'm going to be giving the chair over to Councillor Strength, who, as we all know, is our budget chair. So I just wanted to, before we get started, thank staff. You know, a lot of work has gone into this. It's nice that we're doing it, you know, ahead of the year, which is really nice, and hopefully we will have our work plan ready to go. There'll be lots of healthy discussion. I will leave the managing to that to the chair, and I guess we're off for 2025. So just give us a second. We'll just change spots.
Well, hello, everyone. This is decidedly different than last year in that we have a lovely desk and we're very toasty and warm. And everybody can hear us. So this should be a successful adventure, or venture, maybe I should say. So I will read the resolution to get things started. Recommended 2025 budget, report number FIN 2024-17. Be it resolved that report number FIN 2024-17 recommended 2025 budget be received for information, and that council deliberate on the recommended 2025 budget package in attachment A to this report at its special council meeting scheduled for December the 10th, 2024, with the intention of adopting a 2025 budget as amended for the town of Gravenhurst. It's moved by Councillor Johnston and seconded by Councillor Jorgensen. We would like to throw it over to Mr. Lucas to get things rolling.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This, of course, is Council's third budget. Mr. Jeffrey and I are going to sort of tag team this presentation here today. And as the chair indicated, certainly more comfortable venue this year than we had last year. Another sort of nuance of this budget is throughout this budget is we're transitioning the financial leadership of the organization. This will be Mr. Jeffrey's last budget here with us as the Director of Financial Services, and then behind him is Wayne Campbell, who is the new Director of Financial Services. So a bit of overlap here so we can have as smooth a transition as possible. The appointment bylaw with respect to Mr. Campbell will come forward in December, and we'll go into a further bio for him at that time. But you're witnessing the transition right before your eyes here, and we're looking forward to good deliberations here with council over the next couple of weeks. I'd like to first off start out with some thanks as well to the senior leadership team, corporate leadership team, and staff across the organization for assisting in getting this recommended budget together for you here today. Certainly our financial team, with Mr. Jeffrey at the helm in particular, and our communications team as well, that will be rolling out communications throughout the process here. And of course, thanks to our budget chair for walking us through the process and the pre-work that's gone into this, and council, of course, for your preparation and attention and throughout the process as well. So like last year, the budget was provided well in advance. I believe it was on November 8th. It was posted on the website. So lots of lead time. Because of that, staff aren't necessarily going to dwell too much on the detail here. Today will be more of a higher level overview, and then departments will get into specific presentations with a better degree of detail on December the 10th. So the presentations that we are going to provide throughout the next few weeks will be on the assumption that the documentation has been read. Of course, various members of our team, our administrative team, are here to answer questions along the way as well. So with that, we'll go over to the agenda. I think Mr. Resilius is going to put it up here. So again, the purpose of today is really just to introduce or table the budget leading into the public meeting, which will start at 2 o'clock. We'll get into the overview. We'll talk about the 2025 operating budget, the 2025 capital and multi-year plan, and the impact on the 2025 tax rate. And then, of course, we'll get into council deliberations on December 10th as well. So I think with that, Madam Chair, I'll pass the microphone over to Mr. Jeffrey to kick us off with the generalities of the budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lucas. Mr. Jeffrey, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So the budget, as you know, is the most significant policy tool that council will deal with, and you deal with it each year. Per the Municipal Act, it has to be a balanced budget. It's not like the provincial budget or the federal budget where you can decide to have low development charges and low income taxes and run a deficit. We can't do that. We have to balance our budget and work with what we've got. So the town services, of course, we'll talk quite a bit about what are core municipal services and what are quality of life services. And I'll just let you look at that screen, but what you don't see there, what you won't see in this budget are the services delivered at the district level. So district roads, for example, water and sewer, waste management, social services, social housing, long-term care homes, ambulance services, and policing through the OPP.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we'll kick things off with a bit of a summary of 2024, a bit of a year in review. I won't read through all of the points on the slides here in the essence of time, and quite frankly, a lot of these things I touched on during council last week, so a little bit of repetition here, but maybe new to some of the viewers that didn't view last week's council meeting. But really, this is a bit of a drop in the bucket in terms of what the municipality was able to accomplish last year. But I think it helps set the context for really how we treat the budget, which is in essence a business plan for administration and council. So of course, in 2024, we started the implementation of the multi-year strategic plan and developed action items and performance measures associated with that document. Led through human resources, negotiated two successful collective agreement documents, and those are now well in place. We were able to roll out a recruitment and retention plan coupled with a compensation market review. Undertook, we're probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way through a service delivery review that really puts us in a sound position to achieve the things that were identified in the strategic plan and a lot of other supporting plans and strategies. Some of those include the communication strategy, the ward boundary review, which council just dealt with last week, the fire master plan, a couple of climate change plans and strategies with respect to adaptation and mitigation, the Opera House business plan, recreation parks and trails master plan. Council just last week endorsed an economic development strategy as well, and recently the housing needs assessment as well. So lots of planning, lots of implementation of those plans, driving the municipality forward. These represent really key council policy decisions that guide the activities and the operations to an extent of the town moving forward in a planful manner. On the next slide, we continue on the 2024 year in summary. Led by Legislative Services, we've initiated a review of IT services in collaboration with our partners at the town of Bracebridge and the District of Muskoka. Partnered with the Aurelia Opera House to roll out 2 live theater productions that were quite successful in 2024, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. As most are well aware, the construction was completed on the Gull Lake Park tiered seating program in partnership with the Rotary Club. And of course, we had to do extensive maneuvering to try and accommodate events as the Bay and Beyond project rolled out with phase 1 in 2024 as well. Continuing on the next page, we've got, again, I won't go through all of them, but a couple to note here: the launch of the GIS mapping of licensed short-term rentals. The short-term rental program, of course, has been evolving over the last couple of years, and that mapping component was pretty significant, or was very significant in 2024. Continued ongoing dialogue with the province with respect to the Muskoka Regional Centre and the Ontario Fire College. Continuing to advocate for appropriate and productive uses of those sites that meet the needs of the community. Again, last week, Council updated its 2025 development charge bylaw, supplemented by a background study that's been developed over the last little while. So again, just a snapshot of 2024, and as we look forward, as excited as we are for the accomplishments of 2024, we're equally, if not more, excited about the looking ahead to 2025 and what's contained in this recommended budget. Just to touch on a couple of these as well, continuing the organizational restructuring and strategic resourcing, really to meet the needs of Council's strategic direction. We're continuing to work with the Cottage Country Family Health Team to do what we can to expedite and see a successful build-out of the health hub across the hallway here from Town Hall. Really trying to get behind and support the District Transportation Initiative, the DRT, and really gauge future community transit needs moving forward for the municipality along the way. Looking forward to assuming the recent building addition on the Muskoka Discovery Center. Work on that continues. And we continue to work towards a business plan for the 10-lot light industrial park as well. I mentioned earlier the rollout and implementation of the climate adaptation and mitigation plans. We expect to see the greenhouse gas component of that come to the council table in the next month or so. Continuing along on the next page, additional work that's going on and envisioned for 2025 is facilitating the detailed design of the repurposing of the Wharf sports fields as directed by council to that of an outdoor recreational hub type complex. So Important to note that in this budget, there isn't implementation funding at this point. It's really just the detailed design, or it's the design component and the community engagement component that we'll be focusing our efforts on, that will then dictate what the financial needs are in the future to bring that to light. From another capital standpoint, we've got a new grader and fire pumper contained in the capital budget. And we're continuing to invest time and money into meeting asset management planning compliance for all of our assets. And somewhat new this year will be the need and the implementation of public and council engagement for service levels and asset conditions. Moving right along onto the next page, switching gears to public feedback to date. And I think what we've really witnessed here is more and more traction year over year with the use of the Engage Gravenhurst page as a primary tool to collect citizen opinion and feedback on the budget. And so I'll go through some of the I'll touch on pretty much all of the comments that were received through that exercise. It's been live since September, and lots of constructive comments were received through that process. A lot of the comments, as Mr. Jeffrey alluded to earlier, actually had to do with service levels that are more of a district jurisdiction than ours. And Mr. Jeffrey touched on some of those, including waste collection, district road improvements, and for the most of the housing initiatives. There was reference to the need for, or request for more cleanup, particularly as it relates to goose feces, and a suggestion that we should be looking at different options for hanging baskets in the community. There was a suggestion that there should be more funding for the Heritage Committee with respect to plaques, walking and driving tours and such. Quite a few suggestions with respect to the stairs at Lookout Park, and some trimming and brushing in that area as well. There was a suggestion that we should be incentivizing short-term rentals to go back to long-term in terms of rental areas or residential areas. A few comments with respect to work at the Gravenhurst Wharf, work on the boardwalk and along the waterfront. There were suggestions for some landscaping in that area and trimming. It was suggested that a new pothole strategy should be considered for roads such as Southwood Road and Peninsula Road. And of course, it wouldn't be a budget year without reference to pickleball courts and the suggestion that we get a permanent solution specifically at Muskoka Bay Park. Moving on to the next page, there was a suggestion that more help financially was needed in the downtown area to incent businesses to want to stay open for longer stretches of time. Various suggestions around garbage facilities for businesses, public washrooms, and such. Suggestions around bike lanes and multi-use paths. The one suggestion was specific to getting paths from Taboo to downtown along Bethune Drive. There were suggestions with respect to healthcare, another area that's not typically a municipal jurisdiction, but more and more there's a need to pay attention to that. So there were suggestions for further investment for physician recruitment. Suggestions as far as more funds for invasive plant species education and eradication. And then I won't go through all of them. They're listed in your budget document and further on the screen here. A number of very specific capital projects, primarily in the area of sidewalks and road improvements. So I won't go through all of those. They're there for your viewing pleasure. I'll conclude the list there. And as far as next steps go with respect to public input, the Engage Gravenhurst page remains open. Really good opportunity to have some dialogue and clarification on that portal. So I'd continue to recommend folks use that opportunity. that remains open. You can, of course, as the budget process rolls out here over the next couple of weeks, certainly residents can feel free to, contact your elected representative, contact the Director of Financial Services by phone, email, mail. And of course, we're here today to introduce the budget prior to the public meeting, which will begin at 2 o'clock here today. So various opportunities for public input, and we're actually quite excited to see the degree of engagement on, at least on the Engage Gravenhurst page thus far on the 2025 recommended budget. So, Madam Chair, I think I'll stop talking there and pass it back to Mr. Jeffrey, if that's okay with you.
That's quite fine by me. Thank you, Mr. Lucas, and way to go, Mr. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So this might be a good time to pause for and take questions if there are any at this point before I launch into the operating and capital budgets. So.
Okay. Thank you. Council, any questions for either of these two fine gentlemen that have brought some weighty yet exciting things for the 2025 budget? Okay, there you go.
So, yes, Madam Chair, through you, I'll move right into gross expenditures. And you can see that the total gross expenditures is $29.5 million. You'll see again that, as alluded to by CAO Lucas, that the departments will go into more line-by-line detail on December 10th. But standing back and looking at a high level at these expenditures, we see again that 39% is staffing. That's the traditional percentage that we normally see. 16% is long-term debt, including both internal and external debt payments. And last year that was up a bit at 26% because we paid off the one debenture that was, the final payment was $3.6 million. And actually that was just paid. So I'm referring to last year, which is 2024. But 16% is the normal percentage that we would see in the expenditures, as well as 16% contribution to reserves. And again, the tradition, that's up a little bit. Traditionally, it's about 14%. But we'll see later on that the percentage that we're funding our capital plan from our own reserves and reserve funds is inching up as the capital expenditure goes up. Moving to revenue, again, high level. We will see property taxes are 72% of the funding for the operating budget. Traditionally, that's 70 or 71%. And grants, the next largest one is about 7%, and traditionally that's between 6 and 8%. So moving to a summary of the departments and the total bottom line, you'll see that we're looking at a recommended 4.5% increase in the tax rate. That's up from last year, which finished at 2.99%, and the year before was 2.8%. Note that these departmental expenditures are net of their revenues, so they're really only showing the amounts that are required from taxation only. And again, as I said, more details on each department will come on December 10th. You can see at the bottom, the actual levy increase is 6.8%, but because of 2.3% growth in assessment, that's how we finish at the 4.5% increase in the tax rate. That assessment, again, is higher than what we saw last year. Last year was 2%, and again, what we're seeing is those big planning and building revenues kicking in, but with about a 2 or a 3 year time lag. So we're getting the benefit of those big revenue years from 2 and 3 years ago. That's when MPAC then converts it into new assessment. And this is 2.3 is real growth, so new homes and home improvements. It's nothing to do with reassessment, which normally happens every 4 years, but again, still we don't have a date from the province on that. So although, you know, the story here, although the inflation rate has slowed, we're still dealing with the accumulated inflation impacts that have been unavoidable. So staff has gone and all the department heads have gone through line by line and individually assessed each cost and revenue item. We haven't just applied an algorithm for inflation. Each line has been built up. So what we do see is we see, of course, funding for increased capital plan. And again, that will continue to be more challenging and require more attention and attention on the increase to contribution to reserves. Of course, this year on the operating side, we did see collective bargained labor rates now kick in full in 2025, and the market compensation review implementation explains the staffing cost increases that you'll see across the department. But the number of staff again was contained. So some increases. We'll see that this is the budget snapshot of full-time equivalents and the budgetary increases by department. This doesn't include the Gravenhurst Public Library, a community partner, because they're a separate autonomous local board, but they reported no changes in their staffing as well. So what changes were there? Well, we added really 2. It shows 3, but we've added an additional fire prevention officer coming out of the recommendations of the fire master plan. The recreation and culture is the Opera House technician, who was really putting, close to full-time hours in any ways due to the success of the operations at the Opera House. And so that's just recognition of moving him from full-time to from part-time to full-time. And of course, we saw, and we can't put a grader in the budget without putting in the staff to operate the grader. So those are really 2 plus a little bit, but 3 in full-time equivalents. Now, what we've done, the budget was done without the benefit of the organizational restructuring and strategic resourcing review. Those recommendations are pending, but we saw enough in the discussions and recommendations that we thought it was good to add the addition of a funding envelope of $100,000, and that's in corporate administration. So that would be a placeholder to assist us with any phased-in requirements coming out of that document.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. And I guess we're just going to bat back and forth. So you guys are going to tell me when to bat. Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The other thing I would note is that, as I indicated earlier, that the service delivery review is probably about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way complete. So any additions that you see in there in the 2025 recommended budget come from a general understanding of the direction of that document at this point, notwithstanding that it hasn't made its way to a final draft to the council table as of yet. So we've talked quite a bit about, or at least tabled or introduced some of the things that are in the budget, but always important to spend a little bit of time talking about items that are not included in the 2025 budget at this point, and council can certainly deliberate on whether they should be. But I'll just go through a few things that are not in there. As has been the case for the last couple of years, any unforeseen costs regarding the disposition of the Muskoka Regional Center property. There has been points in history where we've put some funds to the project management of that, or some advice or consulting. At this point, until such time as we see more movement on those files, I wasn't inclined to put any funds in the budget at this time, or recommend that be the case. There's also not a specifically earmarked dollars with respect to incentives for doctor recruitment beyond the third and final year of the commitment of $10,000 per year to support the Health Human Resource Task Force group that has been working away on doctor recruitment regionally. So there was a 3-year commitment. This is the final year of that commitment. So beyond that, there isn't anything in terms of direct doctor recruitment funds. There also isn't funds in the capital budget at this time, or operating at this point, with respect to healthcare initiatives, with respect to expanding the health hub across the hallway. From a capital standpoint, we have earmarked a fairly minor amount of funds that we'll get into when we present the budgets, the more detailed budgets, as far as potentially assisting in business planning and to assist in advocating for funding for those for the expansion of the health hub. There isn't additional funds for additional bylaw enforcement. Specifically with respect to short-term rental tracking or enforcement. So at this point, the short-term rental program is to a degree complaint-based, and then there's traction occurring with respect to the GIS program as well. So there isn't anything in the budget that directs staff or provides resources to go ahead and proactively go out and chase those that are operating short-term rentals that shouldn't be. There are opportunities to do that. There's firms that do that sort of thing. At this point, it's not in the budget at this time, as the evolution of the short-term rental program continues. There also isn't any funds. There was a deputation on September 17th with respect to the food cycle municipal pilot program that was recommended or introduced at that time. There's nothing in this document in terms of a recommended budget for that at this time. There is also, it's worth noting at this point that, and I know Ms. Patterson will get into this more when the budget is presented for recreation, but there's been a growing trend of water quality advisories that has really hampered that program, the in-water at Gull Lake Park swim program, to the point where the majority, I believe, or if not vast majority of lessons are actually having to be canceled. So we're concerned about the expectations of those customers and residents. So the offsetting expenditures and revenues are not actually contained in this budget at this time. Suspect that'll be a point of conversation throughout your deliberations moving forward here. Really, our concern is around the sustainability of that program, given the trend of water quality advisories, making it very challenging. So those are some of the items that are not in the budget. Although I will suggest that there is, with the upcoming greenhouse gas emissions work that has been ongoing and some of the mitigation work, there's a lot of climate-related items in the budget, both operating and capital, but certainly not to the degree that you can expect to see from those documents as they roll out that have a number of quite large ticket items associated with them. So because that study isn't quite complete and fully endorsed by council at this time, a lot of those bigger ticket items are not contained here, but there's a lot of other recommendations in there that advance our climate position. So in summary, as Mr. Jeffrey indicated, the 2025 budget is well within the guideline provided by council with a bit of wiggle room there still. It's, in our opinion, a budget that reflects a continued advancement of council's direction from the strategic plan and a number of the other plans that I listed earlier. And it also reflects a continued increased commitment to the capital investment, which remains a bit of a theme for our town and towns and cities across the province, and I'm sure the country for that matter. So really important to try and stay the course on that investment piece as well. So that summarizes the operating side of things that in terms of the 2025 recommended budget. The next slide, again, is just a reminder of the process that you're undertaking over the next few weeks. I won't elaborate on that, but I think, Madam Chair, I'll stop there, and certainly this might be another logical point to stop and see if there's any questions more on the operating piece before Mr. Jeffrey gets into the capital and multi-year plan.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. I will, before I ask council for questions, just point out that while you see an empty seat where Councillor Jorgensen usually sits, he is with us by way of the new council chambers. And so I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that we are all here present and at the tabling, even though it doesn't look like it. So council, any questions thus far? Oh, Councillor Johnston.
No, Councillor Karen's.
I beg your pardon. Okay. So just keep in mind, this is my first legitimate meeting. So, Councillor Cairns, and then Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if this is the place to ask the question or not, but I do have some huge concerns in regards to the waterfront and Gull Lake being so toxic over the last summer. And I know that we didn't implement some of the programs. We didn't have the goose lady there. We didn't have the little radar thingies. And one year, I think it was 2 years ago when they were up, we found that the geese were not in the lake. They were not there for the whole summer. So I'm just wondering if, and I didn't see it in the budget. I looked for it. I didn't see anything about bringing back, and I could have missed it. I didn't see anything about bringing back the goose patrol lady or dogs, as well as I think that every lake should have at least a couple of those little flashing, Andrew, I'm not sure. They're a reflector laser type thing that only the geese are reflected by. So I didn't see it in here, and I just wanted to know if it was possible, because those swimming lessons have been going on in Gull Lake for, I know Mr. Durnan's here, and he was one of the lifeguards back in the day. So I'd hate to see, because we're in Muskoka, we're surrounded by lakes, and I think that you can get swimming lessons in a pool, but being in the lake is a totally different thing as far as lessons go. So I just wondered if there was, if this is the place or the time to ask that?
Thank you, Councillor Cairns. I would suggest that it will be more of a place on December the 10th during Ms. Patterson's presentation. She'll have information, would imagine, on the lifeguarding program and all that surrounds it. I don't know if this is a proper place for Mr. Stacy to talk about such things preemptively. If that's putting you on the spot, I'm happy to do that.
Excuse me. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Cairns. Regarding goose control, there is actually a bit of a top-up in the operating budget to bring on some more goose control resources, and we are hopeful that we can bring a contractor on site to help us out. We still have the beacons that you referred to, and we're going to be putting them back in play for next year. The cost for those beacons were really very small, and they weren't really worthy of a capital expense, so if we feel we need more of those, we can cover it through our operating portfolio. And recently, Council approved a purchase of a tractor, a cemetery tractor, which is the same as our parks tractor at the last Committee of the Whole meeting. And we are looking to buy some components for those tractors that will help with our collection of goose excrement at the parks.
Mr. Lucas has an add-on.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think that was good in terms of an introduction of what we can dig into a little bit more as far as the goose control piece. But I don't want to give the impression from an administrative standpoint that our opinion is that the water quality issue is solely based on goose challenges. I think there's other environmental factors in play beyond the goose control piece. I know there's been conversations that we've had with the health unit as well about this trend and pattern, and I just didn't want to leave it out there that it's solely based on the goose challenge there, not to suggest that it isn't an issue that we need to address.
Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question for Director of Finance. One, how quickly can you put up the slide on revenue? Quickly? It's not necessary that you do. Yeah? Right, thank you. And so my question is related to the federal provincial grants. Two questions. One is, what's been the trend, Mr. Jeffries, over the last 2 years, for example, on that? I think it's been coming down. Would I be incorrect in saying that?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Johnston. Yes, the trend has been that they are formula grants that if that formula were to be followed, would have ground down our OMPF, our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, from the province. But in fact, they halted it that component, and that's because of that component was reducing because we've seen good assessment growth in our area compared to other parts of Ontario. The other component of the OMPF grant is the Northern Grant, and that was extra monies were put in that by the province. So in fact, at the last minute, on October 28th, instead of getting that like a $50,000 reduction in our OMPF grant, we got more to the tune that it was like more money that all of a sudden we found that we had last minute when we were just putting the ink on the budget. So that's whether that's a reflection of the election coming, but certainly good news from our point of view at this point in time.
Subsequent.
Thank you. You took my point exactly. Both federally and provincially, this is an election year, or 2025 is. And even though, as you said, some of the, like the municipal support grant is firm, but it is formula-based. And my concern is that in an election year, the optimist might say, well, you know, they'll spend more money on municipalities or provide more money on municipalities rather than decrease them. Municipally thinking, I'm not an optimist. I've seen the opposite. And so my concern is that if they were to adjust that formula for the municipal sport grant, there's also what used to be the gas tax. There's that. And the province is spending a great deal of money capital-wise. There's the 413 highway, which has just been approved, against massive public opposition to that project, and a lot of development projects that they have on the books for 2025. So I just have a concern about it being an election year for both provincial and federal next year. We have to be very diligent and keep an eye on those grants, because that could have a significant impact on our taxes. Thank you.
Interesting. Councillor Morphy.
A perfect segue, because I was about to ask something about taxes. With property values skyrocketing since 2016, I get a lot of questions about MPAC assessment, when it's going to be done, and how it'll impact our residents if, let's say, my house or my home goes up 50% from what it was valued at 2016. Pardon me.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Morphy. Yes, if your home, let's say, did show a 50% or even 100% increase in value, that doesn't necessarily mean that your taxes are going to go up. It's how your house compares to your neighbors and to other assessments such as business assessment. So really, you know, it's the shifting in the assessment base. There might be some shifting in reassessment there, but perhaps not, because you know, we do get, I believe it's 92% of our assessment base is residential. So it's a very consistent, predictable assessment base. So just because your property has gone up and your assessment has gone up, so too have all your neighbors and businesses and everyone else. So it's how your share of the assessment, how it's done in comparison to others. That will dictate whether your property taxes go up or could in fact go down, even though your property has significantly increased in value.
Thank you. So just in very layman's terms, so we can get the message out there, if your house doubles, your taxes won't double. It's not, okay, thank you.
Mr. Lucas, and then I'll go to the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I guess the question had actually started out with when the assessment is envisioned, and I suggest that your guess is as good as ours as far as when that might occur. Lots of municipal pressure for that process to be initiated, but really no movement or forecasted date that we could pinpoint at this time.
You haven't been in that seat yet, Madam Mayor.
No, I haven't, so thank you for recognizing me. To that question with the impact, it's just the tax rate would change, wouldn't it? Like, don't we charge, like, isn't it 1.311, like when you, and so that would actually come lower because the assessment is higher? Like, we still need the same amount of money regardless of the value. So now we talk about, we often use it's $26 on 100,000. So the only thing that would change is that number would change in general, wouldn't it? Is that it? Clear as mud, I know, but we still need the same amount of money. It doesn't matter how much value somebody's house is, we still need to collect the same amount of money. So we set the tax rate based on how much we need, not how much the assessment out there is.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Mayor Lorenz. Yes, you're absolutely right, right. And actually, we're getting to a few slides to that effect coming up. But yes, just because the property assessment has grown by 2.3%, that means there's more people sharing that tax burden, so that we come up with the tax burden and then it's shared by the assessment. And so, and later on, we'll talk about what can happen when in a reassessment. So not everybody's property assessments will go increase at the same rate. And so that's when you get increases and decreases compared to your neighbors. So we'll get there soon, shortly.
Okay. All right. Anything else, council? I guess then, who's up next? Where are we to keep it going? Mr. Jeffrey?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So we'll move into the 2025 capital and multi-year plan now. So again, just to summarize the operating side, we saw, some of the pressure was accumulated inflation and some much needed staffing cost increases. On the capital side, though, it's a significant dollar amount as well. So again, we're just approving a one-year capital plan here, or year one of the multi-year plan. Normally, as part of the assessment process, you'll see capital items appear in year 5 and work themselves their way forward over the next 4 years. But sometimes you'll also see new ads or things get accelerated as new information comes to light, some more urgency, studies are undertaken, et cetera. Also, as the asset management plan gets updated for these new state studies for things like inflation, there's so many factors going that it's quite a moving target, and one of the biggest contributors to the asset or the capital and multi-year plan is Director Stacy and the amount of projects that he has to juggle and prioritize is significant. So again, our thanks and finance to Director Stacy and his team. So we have made a good headway when we're looking at our long-term capital goals. And we have been addressing the what's called the infrastructure deficit for the last 3 terms of council. It is the right thing to do. We always have to optimize our costs over the long run and not just take the short-term perspective and push problems to the future. So, and also borrowing internally versus externally allows us to reduce our debt servicing costs and frees up flexibility and capacity to take on significant projects and take on a lot of the ads that are quality of life capital requests. So this year is up from last year. It was $10 million, and it's 11.5 now. The number of projects are virtually the same. Last year was 70 projects. This year is 69. But again, you can see that that the investment is being made in the full spectrum of our asset base. And yes, the majority is on our core needs. We're addressing climate adaptation and mitigation. Our biggest capital project is the Musquash Road drainage system. And we continue to optimize our fleet costs, replacing old vehicles. And again, we've found that buying versus leasing is still the cheaper way to go. And of course, with all our efficiency and lean programs and whatever, we are also keeping up with our technological supports to help staff find efficiencies in everything that we do. So looking at the multi-year, 5-year plan, and again, we can see that we're going from 11.5 million in 2025 up to 13 million in 2028. And so that's a 5-year, like an average over those 5 years of 12 million. Now that average we look at every year, and that average is up 10%. More on that in a couple of slides. So here's our plan to fund the next 5 years. And again, we're always looking for alternative funding sources. That's a must. No matter how hard we pursue them, grants may not be there when we need them. So we do have to take the opportunity when they present themselves. But we need to do a number of things. So obviously we need to make our investments work harder for us with higher investment income for our reserve funds. We need to, as we did, for our new development charges in 2025. So yes, that was an increase of 26% for 2025. However, that was a rate increase. It doesn't necessarily translate into more development charges per se, as the number of exemptions and discounts were mandated by the province. So if anything, we're hoping to at least be able to achieve our 3-year average in development charges. We're also looking, of course, for new user fees or increased user fees that we could come up, such as the seat levy at the Opera House supports the Opera House capital plan, and the dock slip revenue helps the wharf capital plan. So we're looking at as well, declaring assets, looking harder at what assets can be declared surplus. And of course, we shouldn't forget, we're always looking to cultivate strong partnerships with community groups like the Rotary Club, who can access a large number of volunteers and fundraise monies that we wouldn't be able to do if we did it ourselves. So looking, as I mentioned, the capital budget is $11.5 million. Normally we see roads, bridges, and storms, storm sewers, drainage systems about 60%. This year it's 53%. Because we've, our fleets are 15% and our fire is 11%. So normally fleet is about 8%, but this year we have a new grader, the plow, the backhoe, and on the fire side, we've got new vehicles such as pumper number 3. On the funding side, I alluded to this earlier, that the Community Reinvestment Fund and the capital reserves, the obligatory reserves, those 3 items add up to 90% of the funding of this year's capital plan. Normally, last year was 87%. And again, as we see the capital go up, we can't expect the government grants to grow at the same percentage as our capital program. And so we will see more and more of that capital funding coming from reserve and reserve funds. So again, the debate is always, and it's the opinion of some that the town should be focusing just on core asset needs such as roads and storm sewers, fire, and keep the tax increase to the absolute minimum. Or should we add new asset items for quality of life wants in the community? And of course, if we want those quality of life wants without increasing the taxes, then we need to look at alternative revenue sources to fund them in the future. So it's interesting when analyzing this year's capital plan, again, quite challenging in particular for all the directors, but in particular for Director Stacey. There were new additions to the capital plan, and there's separate disclosure of the new adds to the capital plan in the document to be discussed on December 10th. But those new adds accounted for, if they were left there, would account for a 31% increase in the capital plan. And so Director Stacey and the directors, but in particular Director Stacey's, had to push $10.4 million in capital projects out beyond the 5-year, so into the 6 to 10-year range. And so by doing so, that brought reduced that 31% by 19%. As well, a number of the costing increases last year, were high, and I think there was some adjustments so that the net effect was a reduction in the costing of previously reported capital items by 2%. So you get the 31 less the 19 less the 2%, and that's how we arrived at that 5-year average, increasing 10% over the next 5 years. But it's a reasonable budget. So there's been reasonable assumptions about surpluses, investment returns, development charges, all those funding sources. So looking down the road, even 5 years, there will be annual increases required. I think the baseline will be the 3%, and that compares. This year we're proposing 4.5% because of the $1.5 million increase from 10 to 11.5. But normally we should be fine at 3%. That represents an ongoing thing that we have to monitor and stick to our guns, and again, optimize those costs in the long run. So looking at the 10-year impact of our decisions that we're making today, again, we need to be at least at the 3% after this year, at least 3% afterwards, to avoid new debt on any one significant project. And so we can see that now in our chart, the 2% chart. And again, we can see that, yes, we're building reserves over the next 10 years, but when that public works facility project comes and it's $12 million, we'll have $4 million of debt. And as well, our reserves would have dropped by 25%, and so it's a tougher recovery when you see that kind of drop. Whereas with the 3%, we're building, that's the reserves are the green line, so we're building to the point where then we can fund that significant capital project, and perhaps even have the capacity for a second project half the size. So in summary, the progress has been made. There's always more work to be done. Like the operating budget, we have to look at it every year. The asset management plan update in 2025 will be the culmination of a number of milestones in asset management planning in Ontario. And again, it's clear that the current year multi-plan and even the 10-year plan is going to have to be primarily built on capital reserves. And if we don't have consistent investment there, they'll be depleted they'll be quickly depleted, in which case then the capital program would have to be curtailed, and we'd have to focus on the core safety needs versus the quality of life needs that residents want. So, Madam Chair, I think this is another good time to pause for questions, if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. That's great. Oh, good, we've got some questions. Councillor Johnston?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Not so much a question as a comment for my colleagues to think about when we do the deliberations between now and the 10th. And that is that there's a growing trend across municipal Ontario about, the Treasurer mentioned, core services versus quality of life. And the preference, the trend is more and more of the public across Ontario are looking at quality of life. And that leads me to my next point, or my last point, and that's a positive factor when we look at the item that I'm very interested in, Mr. Treasurer, and that is partnership funding. If the public are looking at quality of life services as opposed to core services, it's an opportunity to talk to service clubs, corporations, and other partners that would be willing to provide volunteers or funding for quality of life services. So it's just something that it allows us to provide the services that our public wants more and more without increasing the taxes. So just a comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're just kind of running some interference here. We've had notification that the library won't be coming today. They can't attend this afternoon. So I'm just wondering if we can sort of rejig or fine-tune the agenda as we're a little bit over our time for the public meeting portion to commence. So I'm just wondering what the point of order would be.
Thank you. Through the chair to all of council, this meeting is technically, we're just going to take a pause at the end of the day and we pick it up later. So it's all one agenda flowing, so it's easy to move one item to another because technically this meeting isn't ending until the 10th.
Thank you very much for the clarification. So, Mr. Jeffrey, are we progressing then further with the item number 1, the budget? Just going to keep going and then we'll take public comment when you're through?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So these next items, I think we've talked about the impact on the tax rate. So we've skipped ahead a bit there, and I think we have some understanding, and again, we can address more of those questions later on. And I would say that CAO Lucas, do you want to take it from there and take us to the next part of our agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just the rest of the presentation here was really about sort of establishing the tax rate and what that means for residents. But again, we'll be picking things up in terms of our presentation on December the 10th. In your budget document, you can see sort of the order of departments that we'll be working throughout that day, in addition to the game plan for the capital side of things. So I think, Madam Chair, I won't elaborate on that any further. I believe we have one report to deal with first, very, very briefly, bit of a routine standard report. Yeah, and then from there we can jump into the public meeting, but I understand you've got a motion to deal with before that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. The motion, I would love to put it back on the screen. So after all of the information that you have been provided, there is the motion that's on the table. Any further questions or comments? Then I will ask you to please vote. And that carries. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to go to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the 2025 Ontario Regulation 284-09 Budget Matters Excluded Expenses, Report Number FIN 2024-18. It is moved by Councillor Morphy and seconded by Councillor Robinson. Be it resolved that report number FIN 2024-18 re 2025 Ontario Regulation 284-09 Budget Matters Excluded Expenses be received for information, and that this report be adopted by resolution. Mr. Jeffrey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'll just make some high-level remarks and then throw it open for questions as usual. So this is a required regulatory report, and it to disclose the difference between how we budget and how we report on our audited financial statements. So you can see in the schedule that we have a budget balance when we do all the pluses and minuses that shows a report. When we take the budget and adjust it to the audited financial statements, it shows a surplus of $602,235. So that's, again, it makes sense. We're drawing more from reserves to pay for capital expenditures than we are doing amortization expense. And amortization expense is the amount that we expense of tangible capital assets over their estimated life at a historical cost. So it makes sense that we're replacing our new assets at much higher costs, replacement costs, new acquisitions. Our audited financial statement will show the amortization expense, which is on a historical basis. But I want to emphasize that the town budget and each quarterly variance report that you see is the primary management tool that we use to exercise our fiscal responsibilities. So there's some confusion as to the piece of public sector accounting principles that go into our audited financial statements. But we're required to disclose the fact that the difference in how we treat capital, things such as capital items and long-term debt. So if there are any questions, be happy to entertain them.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffrey. Council, questions or comments? Councillor Johnston. Don't be sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very brief. Just a compliment and a comment to the outgoing treasurer. My compliment is this, that when in my last post, when I introduced that resolution, you said it much more professionally than I did. I would say to my council, look, I'm sorry, you're going to see these figures that the team and I have submitted on a budget, and you're going to see these figures at the auditor. They're different. They're both right. Because there was this look on confusion every single year when I was explaining it, so you did it very well, Mr. Jeffries. And my question is, just remind me, last year, did we get copies of the Opta report before we did our budget, before we deliberated the Opta report?
The Opta report or the financial ratio report?
No, the Opta report.
The Opta report?
Yeah. Did we get one last year before the budget?
No, we don't.
Is it possible to get one? I found them very useful, very useful, because they put in context what exactly that percentage tax increase means in actual homes.
Yes,
across
they're
municipalities.
particularly important when there's a reassessment.
Yes, exactly.
And you have to come up with your nominal tax rate, what it is. But in this day and age of no reassessments, not as, it provides some information, but not as much as they did before. Yeah.
It's not for me to say we should get that, but I'd like to put that request in, because I think it's very useful. And it's next to nothing to produce. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Anything further? Then I will call the question on item number 2. Please vote. And that carries. Okay, so I have been assured that we will provide an appropriate moment on December the 10th for the library to come and present to council their 2025 budget. So we'll move right along. We're just a smidge over time, so we'll move right along to the public meeting for the 2025 budget. I have a resolution moved by Councillor Varney, seconded by Councillor Cairns. Be it resolved that Section 6.1 of the procedural bylaw be suspended to permit the public to address council regarding the 2025 budget, and that this suspension conclude after the item has been completed. So, it's funny how I forget what happens at this particular moment in time, but I'm sure it'll come right back to me. I believe that the podium is up for, oh, I need to call a vote first. Just a second, all you people in the back row there. Please vote. And that carries. So now, I will offer up the podium to anybody that feels compelled to come and say their piece. Oh, that's a good point. Hello, thanks for coming.
I'm Jenny. I live right by the park, Lookout Park, and there's never been a problem with the stairs until you guys put that new old age home, and then the stairs just disappeared. The only other problem we have at the park is people go in the bush and they use the bathroom. So I want the stairs back so we can use the park like it used to be, and maybe put a fence up so they don't have to go. They won't go to the old age home. because it's always been part of the park.
Thanks, Jenny. What's your last name, Jenny?
Harbridge.
Thank you, Jenny Harbridge. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Barbara McNeese Stallard. I'm the current chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I'd just like to talk to a little bit about making a case for an accessibility coordinator position in the town of Gravenhurst. So I think that the town of Gravenhurst is doing an excellent job in advocating for those with accessibility needs. Jonathan Gilston, the deputy clerk, is an excellent support for the Accessibility Advisory Committee. I think the town, however, could up their game a wee bit by supporting accessibility for all by hiring an accessibility coordinator. I'd like to just say a few points about that. In particular, 100% of us have accessibility needs. We all use those curbed ramps when we're going through intersections as pedestrians. We all love ramps when we're getting in and out of businesses. All of us use and benefit from an accessible environment. Some of us need accessible parking spots, and many of us covet those parking spots as well. 100% of us also benefit from the expertise of those with accessibility needs. Their achievements benefit society and allow us to celebrate how inclusion, diversity, equity, anti-racism, or anti-hate, or what we call in the district IDEA, is key to an exceptional community. I really love Gravenhurst's strategic plan, especially goal number 4, which focuses on celebrating Gravenhurst as a welcoming and equitable community where we all can thrive. Our strategic plan is our guiding framework for council and town staff as we seek to make decisions and invest our resources to serve the community's best interests. I believe an accessibility coordinator is a prudent, timely investment. And let me again say that the accessibility coordinator is a prudent and timely investment. 100% of us have the right to be productive members of Gravenhurst. 0% of our staffing dollars are specifically earmarked for an accessibility coordinator. Sure, we do have staff like Jonathan who have a few objectives of their job duties about accessibility, but that's only an infinitesimal amount of their workload. And to be clear, Jonathan's not required to be trained on accessibility matters, yet he's there to support us, which we really, really appreciate. Also, as the chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I'm asking that the town hire one person who is an accessibility coordinator, one person who is trained in complex technical accessibility matters. This person is also there for updating the multi-year accessibility plan, projecting future needs, and making recommendations to ensure that the town is proactive in advocacy. One person who can undertake research, analysis, and gather information about legislative technology advancements, best practices, and community needs and trends as well. One person who can provide leadership, support, expertise in disability-related issues to staff. One person who can collaborate and guide staff and employers on accessibility matters. One person to ensure those with accessibility needs are included as key members of the Gravenhurst community. And one person to collaborate with key community groups about accessibility. The Accessibility Advisory Committee's discussions advocate for this position. District Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting on October the 9th, 2024, indicated a desire by Councillor Buey, and my apologies if I mispronounced his name, for at least one part-time accessibility coordinator at the district level. Though that's a wonderful idea, I can't imagine how one person could possibly address all the district needs across our vast geography. The town staff would know best, of course. In closing, I believe that the town would benefit from an accessibility coordinator position, and I leave this request in your more than capable hands. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Anyone else out there in the gallery like to come forward? Always a pleasure to see your face, Mr. Durnan.
Good afternoon, council and staff and the public. My name's Gord Durnan. This has sort of become an annual kind of thing at budget time. I missed a few years of addressing the budget because of the pandemic and some other health issues, but I thought I should come over this afternoon and say hello. I really appreciate that we now understand in the town of Gravenhurst what a smidge of time is. It's 20 minutes, according to the chair. So I thank you for that definition, so we can use that in our future planning. I want to start this town is doing a whole bunch of great stuff properly in terms of quality of life. I've seen this town develop since Councillor Cairns mentioned that I was a lifeguard at one point in time. That was about 64 years ago, so it's just the other day. But I've seen this town change and develop and grow, and in the last 10 years, I think it's done even more than previous councils in terms of building the quality of life in this town. Huge number of new people coming to town. They're being welcomed. They're participating. And this last weekend and this summer was an amazing array of things for people to do, both locals, tourists, and cottagers. It was phenomenal this year. Last weekend, between the parade and the celebration on Friday night, the fabulous tree and the comments, we are doing a lot of things right. You are doing a lot of things right, and we need to continue doing those. So quality of life, Peter, yes, Councillor, quality of life is important. That's why people stay when they've retired, and I'm fortunate to have been retired, I guess, 20 years come February, but I'm still busy, still involved, chairing one of your committees as well. And the more quality of life we can offer as a community. If you're coming from the city these days and from any major industry or profession, you are not living with human beings most times. You are living on devices, on electronics, and you are working probably 60 to 80 hours a week, and you are missing the human touch. When people come to Muskoka now to retire early, they're better educated, they have more money, they have more knowledge than ever before in the history of Muskoka, and we can engage them with the human quality they need to really enjoy retirement. So we can give them something when they come here to live that's going to enhance the future of Gravenhurst, all of our lives, because we have the ability to offer that human satisfaction that they can't get in the cities. So let's keep it up. Let's do well. I like my math, Ross, better than the math on tax burden. I got my love letter from the town saying that my monthly tax bill was going to go up $8 a month. And that, according to my math, and my math may not be right, is only 2.2%. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate that, and I also think that the tax department does a great job every year. They send out a love letter in June, at the end of June, almost at the end of June, telling everybody what their tax position is, and they include a coupon for a free hot dog at the Canada Day celebration served by you. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Oh, Mr. Durnan, you're so enchanting. Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else? Well, it looks like that's that. Oh, there is, I understand from the clerk that there is nobody in the ether. Other than Councillor Jorgensen, there is nobody else. Okay, so I'll take that as a completed public participation and we'll call the question. Please vote. Didn't I read it already?
No, we voted on this.
Oh, we've already done that one. Beg your pardon. So So I have a resolution moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Be it resolved that the special council meeting regarding the 2025 budget reconvene on Tuesday, December the 10th at 2024 at 9 a.m. Please vote. And that carries.